One of the inevitable happenings in life is that kids grow up. But can the same be said for the Junior Eurovision Song Contest? Of course, any institution will and should evolve. But when we look at where Junior Eurovision was, one question we have to ask ourselves is, where is it going? For starters, the contest is becoming more popular. Whilst there was a point in the mid-2010s when the continued existence of the show was in question, now that awkward phase has comfortably passed. The 2021 and 2022 editions reached 33 million viewers across the measured markets, with votes coming in from some 180 so countries around the world. And this is despite a slight fall in the number of participating countries in the past couple of years, after the peaks of the late 2010s and 2021. Some countries have withdrawn from the contest in recent years, or in the case of others, have been kicked out. Junior Eurovision has arguably become more mature too. Gone are the days of child bend songs being required, leading to some interesting compositions and even winners. Nowadays, most entries are written by adults, although not all. For example, Ukraine's entry in 2021, which was co-written by Alina herself. As a result, many entries are deemed more mature, leading more towards the latter end of the contest age bracket. While some may argue that Junior Eurovision shouldn't feature these kinds of sounds and should instead remain exclusively juvenile in nature, the reality is that kids these days do not spend their waking hours endlessly consuming nursery rhymes and the less viral relations of Baby Shark. They listen to what their parents listen to. They listen to what's on the radio. They listen to what's on Spotify. I mean, for goodness sake, even Kids Bop feel the need to cover these supposedly more adult songs. And looking at recent results, we see these more mature kind of songs faring very well on the scoreboard. Armenia won with arguably one of the most groundbreaking songs in the contest history in 2021 with Kwame Kwame. Also, the United Kingdom, who won the public vote in 2022 with a song written by a team who've worked for the likes of Ava Max and Pharrell Williams. Indeed, Freya Sky's Lose My Head would not have sounded out of place whatsoever in the UK Top 40. The 2023 edition of Junior Eurovision will be historic in that for the first time ever, all of the Big Five will be competing. The debut and return of those countries may help to lend an extra scoop of credibility to the contest, which may, in turn, encourage other countries to join or come back, especially the Nordics. For example, this year sees the debut of Estonia. Iceland have also expressed an interest in participating, although have yet to actually do so. Protecting the well-being of contestants in any show is important, but especially so when those involved are kids. Many broadcasters opt for internal selection, partly no doubt due to budgetary reasons, but maybe also so as not to expose more kids than necessary to a competitive environment. And for those that do compete to represent their country, they can do so behind closed doors. Measures are, of course, in place to protect the participants at Junior Eurovision, but there is still more that can be done. Is it really necessary to show a split screen when the jury winners' online points are announced? Would it not be better to cut to the host instead of that moment, thereby avoiding the inevitable face-dropping moment being aired around the world? And should the age range for participation be shifted slightly upwards? Under current rules, they have to be between the ages of 9 and 14. Is it worth adjusting this to focus more on teenagers who may be able to cope better with a contest than your average 9-year-old? Besides, putting 9-year-olds against 14-year-olds does seem strange. Having a range of, say, 11 to 15 or 16 may be better. One recent change which has been much welcomed is the date of the contest being reverted back to late November. In 2021 and 2022, the show was held in mid-December, and while the weather can't be entirely to blame with sickness abounding across these 2 years, moving back to a time when illnesses were less common is certainly sensible. When we look at the history of the Junior Eurovision Song Contest so far, it could indeed be likened to that of a child's development. The prepubescent years full of joy and silliness. Then the awkward teenage years when one is trying to adjust and discover themselves. And now, as the contest enters its third decade, we see a more mature being. As we look ahead, we may hear less of the so-called child-friendly songs, but that's not to say that lyrical filth and euphemisms will become a thing at Junior Eurovision, but more a reflection of the modern and evolving taste of today's youth. We may see the return and debut of more countries, although it's unlikely the 20 countries limit will be surpassed anytime soon. But one thing is for sure, just as it has for the past 2 decades, it will continue to bring smiles to the young and the young at heart alike.